Hi guys, it's Isa. Today we're gonna see the basics of the Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. So as you know, Brandon has created just so many amazing stories, so many amazing worlds, but all of these worlds connect within a universe called Cosmere. And you can totally read any of Brandon's books without knowing about the Cosmere and without understanding how the different stories link. But it's true that there are other layers, and that if you know these basics, you will be able to pick just a little bit more of those stories. And so we'll start with the basics. What is the Cosmere? The Cosmere is this universe that Brandon created in which there are at least 12 different solar planets. I say at least because this is now. No one knows what Brandon might be able to do in the future. This is kind of like the map of the Cosmere, kind of like in the universe. And so we see how we have Roshar, which is the world where the Stormlight Archive takes place. Then we also have Nalthis, the world of Warbreaker. We also have Sel, the world of Elantris, and we also have Scadrial, the world where Mistborn takes place. And so each of these worlds has different stories, different characters, and overall different types of magic. But all of these stories are linked by a set of rules that are common to the Cosmere. Gravity and electromagnetism works as we know, so laws of physics work just as much, and we will have two main elements within the Cosmere that blends and links it all, and that we're going to be discussing today. The first one is Investiture, and the second one, the Realms. Cosmere is often compared with the Marvel MCU because we have different stories, we have different planets where our main protagonists live, but at points there are crossovers between the different characters, and this is exactly what is happening as well within the Cosmere, because we have special people called the World Hoppers, we will get there, that jump between the different worlds and that they do some sort of cameos in the different books. And we start with Investiture. Investiture, it's the name that Brandon has given to magic. Everything has magic, everything has a soul, even a rock. And the Investiture comes from this godlike being called Adonalsium. Adonalsium was this kind of god that is often referred as kind of like the force of creation. And it seems that people back there were aware of Adonalsium. Some adore him and some were against him. And it seems that at some given point, some people kind of gathered in order to defeat Adonalsium. It seems that they created this weapon, and with this weapon they were able to kill it. The moment when Adonalsium is killed, it's often referred to as the Shattering, because this power was divided into 16 different shards, each of them kind of like referring to a specific area or motivation. Honor, odium, ambition, all of that. It seems that this weapon was used at least once before, but it ended in failure. And this time, these 16 shards were divided into some of the people that were there. We know that there were more than 16 people because Hoyd was also there. He was offered a shard and he rejected it. But the rest of the people decided, yes, I want a shard. And in that moment, they kind of transcended into godlike beings, because these shards kind of like need a person, need a vessel. It's not that your personality can affect the shard, but rather that you will lose yourself, you will lose your own memories, and you will only become this part of the motivation, of the intent that was part of Adonalsium. These shards discussed to go kind of like off planet and be separated and live, just by themselves. But this wasn't really an oath, and as a result, we have shards that live alone in some planets. For example, we have Endowment, which is the shard from Nalthis, the world of Warbreaker, that it's there alone. But then we have others that went together. For example, we have Devotion and Dominion, which are the ones that lived in Sel, the planet of Elantris, as well as Preservation and Ruin, the ones in Scadrial, the planet of Mistborn. And then we also have odium, honor, and cultivation, which are the ones living in Roshar, the planet of the Stormlight Archive. There's one specific shard that took upon himself to kill the rest of the shards. He wants to be the only shard living. It's not even that he wants the power of the other shard for himself, trying to become this Adonalsium. No. He just wants to destroy the rest, and that one is odium. He has killed different shards, for example, devotion, dominion, and honor, and he is kind of like in the path to kill everyone. Once these shards get into the planet, they really create an effect in that planet, and like the magic system will therefore be different. And that's why, for example, in endowment we have these breads, right? And this take me to the next level within investiture, which is investiture can take three main forms. It can be solid, it can be liquid, and it also can be through gas. As examples of this investiture being in a solid form, we have mainly the metals that we see in Mistborn, and also the steel of the shard blades is also considered a pure element of investiture. We then go to next form, which is liquid. Liquid, it's supposed to be like the most powerful of the different forms that investiture can take, and it's kind of like formed as a result of a shard or different shards living in a world for a lot of time. And what they create, it's called shard pools, which is kind of like this well that it's full of pure investiture. We have some examples, for example, in Lantris, but we also have some in Mistborn with the Well of Ascension. The last but not least of the forms is the gas form, and in here there are at the same time three possibilities. We will have biochromatic breath, which is the one that we have in Warbreaker. That's how the magic system works. We will also have the mist, which is again one form that happens in Mistborn. And then the third one, it's light, which is the main form of magic that happens in Roshar, the Stormlight Archive. And then we go to the different realms, and we will have three realms: the physical, the cognitive, and the spiritual. These different layers happen in every world, everywhere in the Cosmere. And it's worth to understand that it's not necessarily layer upon layer upon layer, kind of like physical, cognitive, and then spiritual, but rather kind of like in circles. We have the physical, which is bigger than the cognitive, and then the spiritual. The physical, it's kind of like the world that we can sense, this world. Then we have the cognitive world, which is the world of ideas, of perceptions, of self-image. And then we have this spiritual world, which is the world of the concepts, right? And so we know a very little about the spiritual world, but the cognitive realm has a really important role throughout the Cosmere, especially in the Stormlight Archive. It has kind of like a proper role. It is called the Shadesmar. And it's interesting to understand how this cognitive realm works in order to understand how world hoppers go from one place to another. The thing is that the cognitive realm, it's kind of a reflection of what happens within the physical world. However, it is only created if someone is there to imagine it. So, as you can imagine, in parts of the land where there is no one, for example in deserts or in the void of a space, as there's no one there to imagine that space doesn't have a reflection in the cognitive world. That's why cognitive world, it's much smaller, and the distance between the different worlds, it's super close, which makes it really easy for different world hoppers to get into one world to another using what it's called a perpendicularity. So the perpendicularity, it's just being able to have a lot of investiture and being able to rip the different realms and going from the physical to the cognitive, and just moving through the cognitive realm to another world and surfacing in the physical realm. The most popular world hopper that we have in Cosmere is Hoyd. He appears in every of the different books of Brandon. We don't really know, and he hasn't really disclosed how it is that he is such on point to be in every of these stories, and how he, you know, like it's able to play kind of a role or whatever his intent, but nonetheless he is there. And so you might be wondering, but wait, if these different stories clearly happen at different times, how is it that Hoyd can live and can go through the different worlds and, you know, still be living? And the thing is that although he didn't took the shard, he is immortal thanks to the remnants of this weapon that was created to kill Adonalsium. And so let's get now a little bit deeper within the spiritual world. Everything has a soul, everything has a concept. A rock has a concept of a rock, and you have a concept of a person also there. Every soul has what it's called the spiritual web, which is this kind of like connections that links us. And there are three elements worth discussing here. The first one is identity. This identity draws from your ancestors, from the world, and you know, it's what makes you. Then the second element, it's the connection, which is how you are able to create connections with everything, investiture included, meaning that if someone kind of like damages your ability to connect, you won't be able to access investiture. And then the third one, it's fortune, which is an element that has been very little talked about, and we just know that it's something that allows you to see into the past, into the future. You know, it's not really accurate, but it allows you to do so. And I didn't mention, but the spiritual realm is the only realm in which space and time does not affect. That's why with this fortune you are able to see everything that it's there, right? This soul, this concept of yourself can be damaged through different ways. The first one is emotional trauma. And so it seems that through emotional trauma, you know, kind of like the soul starts to have different cracks, and the investiture, that it's the element that composes the soul, and mainly majority of investiture comes from the spiritual realm, kind of like starts seeping through your soul, making this way more easier for that person to reflect and manifest investiture powers. That's why a lot of our characters have such traumatic backstories, right? And still have powers. And then there's other way, which is also kind of like through physical damage. And so the spiritual realm also plays an interesting role here with the healing. When we see how one of our main characters is damaged, but then some part of their body kind of like comes up again, that's because in the physical world, one part of your body it's missing, but then through investiture, you're able to see through your self-image, and you know that something is missing, and so the investiture will make sure that you are healed. And so that's a little bit the dynamics here, and that was it for today. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I really hope this was useful for you, and that now you're able to pick a little bit more of the different stories, like the underlying stuff that Brandon is creating from a soul. And I really wish you a happy reading.